Hello, I'm your host, Steve Sexton, and welcome back. Now, in our previous segments, we've talked to Alan Nevin, real estate economist, talked to us about how real estate is going to be moving forward in the next year, 6 to 8%. That's just wonderful. We talked to Glenn Henderson and Shannon Keatley, top realtors here in San Diego, and basically talked to us about how to stop your money from falling through the cracks, and hiring the right realtor makes a big difference. Now, the next segment is all about the taxes. It's all about keeping your money away from Uncle Sam. When you have real estate transactions, especially with the silver-haired tsunami or the baby boomer, they're doing one of three things. One, they're getting a little old and deciding, you know what, I can't be walking up those stairs anymore, and I want to transition to a senior living community. But you know what, I've had this house for 40 years. I bought it for $200,000. Now it's worth $1.2 million. I only have a $500,000 exemption, and I'm going to have to pay taxes on $500,000. That's like $175,000. Or you're going to have somebody who's just gotten tired or just wants to retire, and they've got a number of real estate investment properties, and it's time to transition them out. But their problem is you know what, I don't want to pay taxes, but I still love that rental income, and I don't want to pay for it, okay? Or I don't want to pay taxes for it. So I have Bill Exeter here. He's the president of Exeter 1031. He runs a national company. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's done over 125,000 1031 exchanges. But Bill is the person that we go to, or anybody would go to, that needs an expert, especially when somebody's not doing it right. They go to Bill to solve the problem. In fact, lawyers go to Bill because he's a professional witness, because he knows the industry so well and how the operations work. But let's talk about a 1031 exchange, and let's see what it can do for you before we bring in Bill. First of all, you'll see this one slide. It's called the hypothetical illustration of a commercial property sale for a 1031 exchange. It's a $1 million property. You're going to net $774,000 after all the taxes. Now, if you do a 1031 exchange and you look into the second side, you're going to say, oh, I'm going to net $1 million. I've just saved myself $226,000. Now, Bill, you know what, the reason why we brought you here is because we'd like you to educate people about how 1031 exchange works.
So that's a lot of money to defer, so it's definitely worth it. The 1031 exchange would actually allow them to sell that property in that case and reinvest with other replacement property, and by doing that they can defer all those taxes. So the capital gain tax, the depreciation recapture tax, the Medicare surcharge would all be deferred.
Now, how does the 1031 exchange work though? What's the nuts and bolts of it?
You know, the important thing is to make sure you get a qualified intermediary involved right up front, and that's what our job is at Exeter 1031, is to do that.
Now, hold on a second. Can a CPA do this? Or do they typically do it?
A CPA typically does not do it. They could do it if they wanted to, as long as they're not representing the taxpayer in any other matters.
Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I've had clients as a financial planner come to me that had a 1031 exchange blow up on them because the person they were doing it with thought they knew what they were doing, but they didn't.
Yep.
So, you know, that's why I want to say it's really important that you get the right person to do this. You know, not always a lawyer. You need a 1031 exchange facilitator, licensed, the whole shot, right?
Absolutely. And the key is to have that qualified intermediary involved prior to the closing of your sale transaction.
So when you say involved, when is that? Are you talking once it goes to escrow, before that?
As long as we're involved before it actually closes escrow, you're okay.
Okay.
If escrow closes without the qualified intermediary involved, it's taxable, and there's no way to go back and fix it.
Great, great. So how does the 1031, go ahead and tell us how it works.
Sure, so once the closing occurs and you've got your qualified intermediary in place, then you have your 45 days to identify what you're going to acquire as replacement property, and you have a total of 180 days to actually complete that transaction.
So here's the questions that I get a lot with 1031 exchanges. I got 45 days to identify a property. How many properties can I identify?
Good question. There's a couple of rules. Most people use the 3 property rule, so you can identify up to but not more than 3 properties. Usually you identify 3 with the intent to buy 1. There's other rules you can look at too if you're trying to diversify or whatnot, but that's certainly the most common.
So sometimes what happens is people, they got identified property number 1, and somebody else buys it, property number 2, and here we're at property number 3. They can go after another one after that one. Is that correct? Or?
Absolutely, yep. So they can certainly identify those 3 during that 45 days, and they can change their mind as often as they want, as long as they're still in that 45-day period. But there's 2 issues with the 1031 exchange. One is the qualified use test, and that means what you're selling has to be rental, investment, or use in a business. The second is like kind, and that is if you're selling real estate, you have to buy real estate. And any kind of real estate is like kind. So really the key is make sure you're selling and buying rental, investment, or business use property.
Okay, so that means if they have oil and gas interests, they can 1031 exchange that into a rental property or a commercial building.
Yes, absolutely. Now, there's all sorts of interests like oil and gas, water rights, air rights, mineral rights that qualify as like-kind property. It's a great ruling that came out from the IRS where they allow you to actually move out of the house, convert it to rental property, so you'd rent it out for, say, 24 months. And now you can say that you have lived in it for 2 out of the last 5 years, so you still qualify for the $500,000 tax-free exemption. Tax-free is always better.
We love tax-free.
And then you can also say you've rented it for 24 months, so now it qualifies for a 1031 exchange. So when they sell the property, they'll get the first $500,000 in gain tax-free, and the rest of the gain can be deferred through the 1031 exchange transaction. And they often want to go into properties like Delaware statutory trusts where they have absolutely no property management headaches to worry about.
Too often, people don't take the time to plan. They just think, I'll just do a 1031 exchange. And you've seen this before.
Absolutely.
Where it comes to that end, and you know what? The transaction just doesn't work out. If people sit down and work with the planner properly, they could figure out what is my option B if it doesn't work out. So I've sat down with people doing 1031 exchange that you've done for them and worked with our next speaker, Don Meredith, where they went all the way down to the end, and you know what? Hey, the property they wanted, they weren't able to purchase it because somebody else got it. And what they did is they immediately had that option where they got a hold of Don, got the Delaware Statutory Trust, and they were able to not pay taxes on it.
And it's important they actually identify the Delaware Statutory Trust during that 45-day window. So they often identify that as a backup property just in case something can happen.
Yep. Now we've gotten past Alan Nevin talking about economics, Glenn and Shannon talking about the right way to stage a property and move forward with purchasing a property. We're talking about taxes now. We've just finished here with Bill Exeter. Bill, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This is a guide to 1031 exchanges. You can only get it from Bill Exeter. This is the de facto guide. You want to go and get this guide. There's an information button on your computer. Just select that. All you'll need to do is put in the topic line 1031. If you have a question for Bill, Bill's open to answer your questions. You can set up a phone conversation. Make sure you put your name, address, and your phone number in there so they can contact if you need that. Now, our next segment, you know what? Some people, they just don't want to move into another rental property. And they're tired of the business, or they want to retire, completely retired. That's where our next speaker comes in.